Hello friends, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Michelle Fondin, and I'm the author of the new book, Twin Flame Romance, The Journey to Unconditional Love, which you can find in Kindle or in paperback, soon on Audible books. So if you book a reading, a 60 or 90 minute reading, this month in October, I'll give you a free paperback copy. I will send it to you if you live in the United States. And if you want as well, I will send you a promo code for the Audible book of Chakra Healing for Vibrant Energy if you book the 90-minute reading as well. And I am also offering now the 30-minute, that's brand new, just coming out this week, the 30-minute reading for $89. So I do tarot or angel tarot and angel oracle cards as well. And I do it over Zoom conferencing. That was a question that came up. I do it over Zoom conferencing, so it's video chat. And if you prefer not to have video, we can certainly do phone. But today I'm coming to you, it's different today. It's so weird. Here it is, a Friday night. I just came back from the gym. I'm still in my gym clothes. I'm working out at the gym, and this came to me. And I felt a sense of urgency to reach out to you. Now, I'm not going out on a Friday night. I'm talking to you guys. Do you believe it? This is so crazy. And that's actually one of the reasons why I was compelled to do this video. And interestingly enough, when I was walking out of the gym and I was kind of like fixing my hair in the mirror, I looked down at the locker next to the mirror and it said 111. I'm like, okay. A little less formal, if you will, as far as topics go, but this is going to be my story raw and what lessons that I've had to learn this week. And it's really sucked. Let me just tell you this. The lessons that I've had to learn this week are not fun lessons. It's stuff that I knew was probably brewing underneath the surface, but I really did not want to learn these lessons. Believe me, guys. It sucks. So, meanwhile, I have the cat biting my foot. As some of you know, I actually have a brand new kitten. She is a little over 3 months old now. Her name is Luna, or Stella Luna. Luna for short. And right now she is actually biting my foot. So hopefully soon she will actually stop. She's underneath the chair biting my foot. I think she just wants to play, and I am doing this video for you guys. So let me just tell you this. First and foremost, I am raw with you guys tonight, and I'm super upfront with you guys in my videos. And it's not because I need approval. It's not because I need like pity or whatever the case may be. It's that I figure this is the way I've been my whole life. But I really figure that if my life and my struggles and my joys and everything that comprises my life, if my life in any way can help another person by what I have gone through, then that's what I'm here for. I'm not here for like glory and fame and any of that. It's my internal urge, part of my life path and purpose, just to help other people. So if what I'm going through is being like brutally honest about what I'm going through is going to help you because you can identify with my story or you can identify with my lessons or what I happen to be going through at any particular moment, then that is the greatest gift, is just if it resonates with you, if you can take that lesson, if you can move forward with that lesson. So as I tell my story today, please don't feel compelled to be like, oh, poor Michelle, like this is what she's going through. It's really too bad. It's terrible. Like, I don't look at it like that at all. Yes, it's tough. It's not fun to be learning certain lessons. It really has been a tough one this week. But it's life. It's part of this twin flame journey. And as I mentioned in my book, Twin Flame Romance, and a lot of you have read the book already, but as I mentioned in my book, like this journey, this twin flame journey is all about learning these lessons at lightning speed. It's like you are on the fast track to learning these lessons, whatever lessons you have to learn. And it doesn't always feel good. Oftentimes it really sucks to have to go through these lessons. So if I get emotional, if I start bawling my eyes out during the video, so be it. That's what's to come up. I've been talking to you guys about the life transition that I had to go through. So I quit my job, my full-time job, to be self-employed again full-time. Now, this is not my first go around. I started my yoga business back in 2008. I was going through a divorce, a wanted divorce. I was in a marriage I wasn't happy to be in for over 13 years. It wasn't a match. There was a lot of things which I can't talk about on camera in the marriage, and it was not at all an energetic match. If we're talking about energy, 100% not an energetic match. And so I started my own business in 2008, and I was raising 3 kids pretty much by myself full time. I mean, their dad took them every other weekend, but most of all the burden, the daily burden was on me. Daily and night burden was on me, which I loved. I love my kids. My kids are completely awesome. And I can say that to this day, my kids rock. I have 3 kids. They all rock. They're all completely amazing human beings, all 3 of them. They live a life of service. They're honorable. They're honest. They're just amazing people. So I feel really proud to say that I love being around my kids. They're amazing, amazing people. So I was doing that. I flew back from France. I was living in France at the time when I was going through my separation and divorce. And I flew back from France with some money in the bank, 3 kids and 2 cats. That's how I came back. And I didn't have any clue. I had no clue how to run a business. So I did that for 10 years. And then when I moved to California, when I moved to LA, mid 2018, I decided to get a full-time job just to stabilize my finances, really. And it wound up being the best decision I ever made. I worked for a great company, great people, all of that. It was a great, great, great experience. It was a wonderful experience. Because of a lot of things that had happened, I had to leave that job, and it was my choice. I didn't have to, but I felt that it was God calling me to leave and start again in this full-time position as a self-employed person. So it's not the work itself. I know what the work is like. I know exactly how to run a business. I know how to make it work. I know the hours that you have to pour into self-employment, which are often exceed the hours that you have a day job. Like, honestly, when you're self-employed, you're never off. You're always on. You're always looking at your phone. You're answering texts and emails and calls and all that. So it never finishes. Friday night, reaching out to you guys. See what I mean? It was never a question of, can I do it? It was never a question of, is this something that I want? Because ultimately, I knew my inner calling was to serve others. And in the capacity where I was working full time, I really wasn't able to serve others. It was, kind of service, but a lot of it was, duties that had to be conducted in the realm of business with a lot of rules and regulations. So I didn't feel that I was of service to people in the best way that I knew how. So that transition, as I mentioned, was difficult, and it was difficult for a lot of reasons and this really takes me to my story and the lessons that I've had to learn this week in particular. Let me backtrack a little bit. I said I was married, and ever since I was a teenager, I have been in a romantic relationship pretty much nonstop. I have not been really single, for more than maybe 2 to 6 months in my entire life since I was a teenager. Like, that's not very long. I think maybe 6 months was the longest period of time that I was single. I've not been single a lot. And a lot of you might be thinking like, oh, well, maybe, and you might identify with that. You might identify with being in relationships and not being single. And so sometimes it can be looked at as, well, maybe that's just because you're not comfortable being with yourself. And that's one theory. And a lot of people stay in relationships because they're not comfortable being with themselves. Totally valid point. For me, I actually love being with myself. I love being with myself. You cannot be self-employed if you don't like being with yourself. And furthermore, you can't be an author if you don't like being with yourself, because writing is one of the loneliest works, or how do you say, vocations? It's one of the loneliest vocations that exists on the planet. You literally have to spend hours and hours and hours and hours and hours by yourself writing. So it's not that I don't like my own company. I happen to love my own company. I like my alone time. I like being with myself. The bigger problem is I don't like being outside of a relationship. I love relationships. I am fantastic at relationships. Relationships is where I excel. Relationships are where I rock. I rock at relationships. However, I have not always picked men who rocked at relationships. And so there was this discrepancy of me loving relationships, wanting to make relationships work and rocking at it, like doing all the right things. But I've been in relationships with people who didn't really want to be in relationships, or wanted to be in relationships but didn't want to do any of the work, wanted me to carry the weight of both people. And ultimately that's the main reason why it just never worked out, because the person either had one foot in the door, one foot out the door, or wasn't really committed to the relationship, in the sense of relationships take work. You have to show commitment. You have to put in the time. It's just like anything, right? So whether you're building a career or raising children or going to school, if you don't put in the time, it's not going to work. You have to put in the time and effort. And if you're not willing to put in the time and effort, it's going to fall through the cracks. It's totally not going to work. So for me, the bigger problem throughout my life has been, I identify myself in relationships because I like it. It's not because I'm not comfortable with myself. It's because I like it. I like the sensation of being in a relationship. I like the give and take. I like the affection. I like the romance. I like the partnership. I like all of those aspects and the learning, really, because you learn a lot about yourself in the confines of a relationship. In fact, that's the truth, guys. You learn more about yourself in the confines of a relationship than you do in isolation, because there's no feedback loop. When you're with yourself, you can do a lot of self-growth. You can do a lot of spiritual growth. You can read spiritual literature. You can read psychology books. You can go to therapy. You can take workshops and courses and all those things. There's a lot of things you can do for your own personal development. But when it really comes to taking your personal development to the next level, that is only done in relationship, because there's a feedback loop, right? So when you're in front of that other person, when you're with that other person, they're going to be showing you what you're doing wrong. They're going to be showing you what you're doing right. And they're going to bring up things in you that you could not bring up on your own. So really, I like that give and take of a relationship. So that brings me to why this transition has been so hard. Ever since I was a teenager, I have not been alone. This is going to sound funny to you, but I literally went from my parents' home to relationship, and then I was very young when I had my first child. And then I got married. So it was literally like parents, having a child, being married, having another child, being married, having a third child, and then getting divorced but raising children, and being in another relationship, and then another relationship. So there has never been a time period where I lived by myself outside of college. In college, it was a very short duration. I think I lived maybe one semester by myself in college, or maybe two total when you add them all up. But I had my own room or my own apartment or studio apartment or something like that. But outside of that, I've never lived alone. I've never lived by myself. So when I moved, and some of you know this story already, but when I moved to Southern California to follow a lifelong dream, I lost custody of my son, who was 15. Some of you know this story, some of you don't. I'm not going to embellish on the story. But he does travel to and fro. He goes from DC to LA, LA to DC 9 to 10 times a year. So he's here a lot. But all those other times, I don't have him here. So I live alone in LA. And so when I first moved here, going through the trauma of all of a sudden, like being a full-time mom forever, really, since I was a kid, and then all of a sudden not being a full-time mom and not being around anybody I know and not having any points of contact and living by myself really for the first time since I was a kid, and being faced with all of this was extremely overwhelming. But I got a job, a full-time job. And guess what? I was also running my business on the side. So I went away to a full-time job 5 days a week. And on the other 2 days a week, I was working my own business. So I really didn't have time to process the fact that, hey, guess what? I live alone. I'm not in a relationship. Oh boy, this really sucks. So fast forward to the last day that I worked. And meanwhile, I'm living in a new city, in a new state, with a new job description. I'm making friends at work, but as some of you know, that friends at work are really not friends. They're just kind of like colleagues for the most part. For the most part. I know some of you that have been at your jobs a long time, you've really made friends at work and they're friends outside of work. But for me, it was just like friends at work and then leave work, no friends, right? They're just kind of acquaintances or just colleagues, people you chit chat with at work. But when it's all said and done, there is no point of contact after that. So I'm working full-time there. I'm working full-time here on my days off. Meanwhile, not making friends, not in a relationship. So I'm not really processing or having time to figure out like, oh, good God, I'm living alone. I'm alone for the first time in my entire life. So fast forward to almost 4 weeks ago, about 4 weeks ago. I think it's been almost 4 weeks. I left my job, my full-time job. I started working here, but it got really busy because I am writing my book. I'm publishing my book. I'm recording the audiobook. And lo and behold, my sister comes to visit from Paris. So my sister's hanging out here for a week to 10 days. And we're chit-chatting, we're chatting it up. So all of a sudden, hello, I'm not alone anymore. Yay, my sister's here. Yay, okay. Then my sister leaves. And then my best friend arrives. Now let me tell you something about this. And this brings me to this week. And I know this is a little long and drawn out, but I really want you guys to get a picture and to like understand where my demons are. Because I know you probably have some demons that you haven't completely dealt with yet. And you've been putting it on the back burner. It's like you look at it and you're like, yeah, that doesn't look too pretty. I don't want to look at that anymore. And you just like keep shoving it and putting it on the back burner. And that's actually what I had been doing with this feeling of like, oh my God, I'm living alone for the first time in my entire life. My sister came and left. Then my best friend showed up. This was not planned. I had not planned on this. I saw him back in February and he told me kind of at the last minute that he was coming out and he asked to stay with me. And I went back and forth and I agreed. And here's the thing, guys. My need to be in a relationship was so strong, really strong, that my best friend happens to be my ex-boyfriend. And I know I've told this and I've said this in videos and I've also written it in my book. So some of you know this that have read the book, but I mean, that's true. That's absolutely true. So this is the person I was in a relationship with for 6 years, or almost 6 years, like 5.5 years up until the time I moved to California. We broke it off because I moved, but also there was a whole host of problems there. But the truth is, he is my best friend. I mean, that is the absolute truth. The truth is, he's my best friend. He's the only person that really gets me in life. All of my weirdness and just being someone who's very different. And it's funny, Wayne Dyer, if any of you have ever watched videos of Wayne Dyer, I know he passed away several years ago, but if you've watched like YouTube videos or read his books or heard his audio programs, and I used to like listen to him all the time, he wrote a book called It's Never Crowded Along the Extra Mile. And really what he was talking about was that on this spiritual journey, like the higher up you go on the spiritual journey and like the more self-actualized you get and the more you realize spiritual truths and the more you see life from a different perspective, the more lonely it gets, because there's not many people that are looking at life from this perspective. And so it's really hard to find people that you resonate with, because they're just going to look at you like you're a weirdo. And so my best friend, who is my ex-boyfriend, he gets me. Like, he gets me on every single level, meaning that he understands my weirdness 100% and accepts it at 100%. I could say the most bizarre, weird, off-the-wall thing to him, and he'll be like, yeah, I get it. I understand that. That resonates. I get it. So he came to visit, and before he came to visit, my sister and I were playing around. So my sister's a twin flame. She's in separation with her twin flame. I am still in separation with my twin flame. Last time I talked to him was about 4 weeks ago. So it's been a while. And she just, for giggles, she had gotten this new tarot, I think it was an oracle deck. So she had gotten this new oracle deck. So for the life of me, I can't remember this tarot deck, or I think it was an oracle deck, not a tarot deck. She was just, let me pick a card from my new deck that I just got. Okay, great. And so I looked at her and I'm like, hey, let me play too. I get to play. Let me pick a card too. So I picked a card, and it was telling me right there, like, you need to let go of a past love relationship. And I just freaked. I was like, I've let go of this. And so then my sister gets this intuitive message to me, and she's like, you have to let go of your best friend. Like, you have to, because that was your romantic relationship. That relationship is preventing you from coming into reunion with your twin. And I was just like, I didn't want to hear it. I did not want to hear it. I didn't want to hear it. It was like, no, that's not true. We're best friends. That's not true. I just didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to believe it. And for me, it meant much more than the friendship. The friendship is valuable. The friendship is important. For me, it was that whole relationship piece. It was that still holding on to that relationship piece. So if you followed the video up until now, I said I have never, ever, ever been without a relationship, ever. Except for like 6 months of my whole life. Never been without a relationship. So the fact that I could still talk to my best friend every day, text him every day, or have him text me every day, and have conversations with him, even 3,000 miles apart, meant that I was still kind of in a relationship. Do you understand? So for me, that was still the ties of a relationship, even though I didn't want to call it that. I called it a friendship, which it is a friendship, but there was also a relationship component to it. So for me, it was like a double whammy. Here I have this person who is the one person in my life, besides my sister, but the one person in my life who actually gets me, who understands me on every single level, and who accepts me for who I am as a person. And then on the other level, it's like, oh, good God, like that means I'm letting go of a relationship as well. So that means I am now without a relationship. So not only am I without a friendship, I am without a relationship and a friendship. That was a tough one to swallow. That was super duper tough. And I didn't want to see it, and I didn't want to believe it, and I didn't want to embrace it, and I didn't want any of it. And for me, it just meant I'm alone. I live alone here in LA. Now what? Now what? I've lost my social network at work because now I don't have that. I'm giving up my best friend. I have no relationship. And so now what? Now what? And it came to me today that that is what I needed to move forward. That somehow all of that was keeping me rooted in the past. And having a new beginning and having a new life and a new perspective on life means that I need to move forward and not move backward. There's a really interesting story that when my kids were really little, I was doing student teaching, so I was a school teacher for a very short period of my life. And I met our babysitter, the lady who babysat, she was a kid at the time, who babysat my small children. And she had just moved from Paris. And so we had that affinity because I had moved from France. I'd gone to school in France and she had lived in Paris. She grew up in Paris. She was 16 when we met. She had just moved to the States several months before. And she was pissed about moving. She did not want to move. She had a boyfriend back in Paris. She loved her life in Paris. She liked her freedom and her liberty. She was able to take the metro and go out with her friends and everything. And now she's in suburbia somewhere with no mobility, in a new school, new language, new culture, everything. She hated it. So she told me that she would just sit in her room, read her French books, like her novels, like call her boyfriend and just sit in her room and not come out and not interact with people and just like cry. And her dad one day, after about 6 months of this, her dad one day just got totally fed up. He took away her phone and he threw away her French books. He literally threw them away. And he said, "That's it, enough." He's like, "You live here now. You need to live your life now." And I was like, when she told me that story, I was like, oh my God, that's so cruel. That's awful. Why did your dad do that? And then she's like, I was really mad when he did it. I was really upset when he did it, but it was actually the best thing that he did because, I'm living here and I have life and I have friends. I've made friends here. And so now I appreciate life here, whereas I didn't before. And so now it wasn't my father that made me do this. It was God the Father that made me do this. But it is really tough. It's not easy. And it's not easy taking a look at your demons. It's not easy taking a look at, wow, I've never lived by myself before, ever. And it's not easy taking a look at like, oh, crap, I've never not been in a relationship before. And it's not easy to look at like, oh God, now I have to make friends. Like, really? And the possibility of having people reject you or having people not understand you and who you are. And then just stupid things like I don't drink alcohol. So what do most people do when they go out? They drink alcohol or they go to bars or they go to nightclubs. And so I don't do that either. It's just been epiphany after epiphany after epiphany. And then one final thing that I want to say to you guys in like telling my story and being as raw as possible is there have been a lot of twin flame readings this week that have showed that the karmic situation is ending this week. Now, when we think of the karmic situation ending, we typically think about the divine masculine, right? I'm in my twin flame journey, I am the divine feminine. My twin is the divine masculine. So when we talk about a karmic situation, which doesn't necessarily have to mean a relationship, when we talk about that, we think like, oh, well, that's the divine masculine's issue. Like, they're the ones running, so the karmic issue is their issue. And it very well may be their issue. It's true. It may be their issue. And it may not involve another person. It could involve like a mother or a family member. I meant person romantically. That's what I meant. And it could involve like a job. It could involve a colleague, like a work colleague. There are many things that it could involve. It could involve like their inner demons. So their addictions, their demons that they're dealing with too. But I never considered that the karmic situation keeping my twin and I apart was my own karmic situation. And that's what really hit home today, is that I was like, oh crap, like my karmic situation is what was preventing my twin and I from coming together. Now, there may be other things. I don't know. Only time will tell. But that was definitely one thing. And as sad as it makes me, like, to pull away from this relationship and this friendship for right now, like, I know it's worth it because the unity that is required for my twin and I, and for your twin and you as well, like the unity that is required is a requirement, meaning that the higher spiritual level of the reunion with your twin is what's necessary to live on your life path. So for me, I don't think, being that this person is my best friend, I don't conceive it as being something permanent. I really believe that my twin, who is a really loving and compassionate person, I don't believe that my twin would take issue with me being friends with my ex-boyfriend. It may require some time and distance, but all in all, I don't think that's going to be an issue. I think for me personally, it had to go down the way it went down because of my own issues, because of my issues of not being able to separate relationship from friendship and not being able to allow myself the space to be without a relationship in order to find friendships, in order to figure out what it's like to live by myself, in order to figure out what it's like to like have to not rely on a relationship. And whether it's one day or whether it's 1 week or whether it's 1 month, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. But I had to momentarily step back and be able to choose that rather than choose a relationship that I knew ultimately was not going to go anywhere. It's such a huge lesson, you guys, that honestly, if there are karmic lessons that you need to learn in this, if there are karmic lessons that you're ignoring, that you've been putting on the back burner because they are too hard and painful to look at, then maybe, and you're blaming your twin. See, that's the thing, is if you're blaming your twin for not being in reunion with you and you're like, well, I'm just waiting around for them. Like, I've done my work. I'm all finished. I'm done. If you're waiting around for them to just come around and be with you, but you still have some karmic stuff on your back burner that you haven't looked at, then maybe it's time to take a look at it. Yeah, so I've got my homework kind of cut out for me now, so I'm not sure. And you know, here's another thing that's really easy to do is I am a workaholic. I will say that in all honesty. I am a workaholic. I really love working because I love what I do too. So if I didn't like what I do, I probably wouldn't be a workaholic, but I really love what I do. So I am a workaholic. So my homework is actually to pull away from work a little bit to be able to have a social life. And that's a little scary for me because that means I have to actually go out and meet people. And it's not that I don't like meeting people. I'm totally gregarious. I love meeting people. I love finding out about people. Totally on board. But it's just that piece of having to go through like the beginnings of meeting people and kind of weeding people out that you know might not be friends and all that. That just takes a lot of work. I don't want that work. But it's something that I'm called to do. And I think it's something that you're called to do too. So if you're in my situation that you are addicted to relationships, you've always been in a relationship, and because of relationships, you've always ignored friendships, which is pretty much my story. I've had friends. I do have friends. I probably don't have as many friends as you do, but that's just because I've moved around a lot. And when you change countries and change cities, like you kind of lose touch with people. And I'm not super good about keeping in touch. I'm just not. I just kind of like run my own race. I live my life, and I'm not super good about reaching out to people. So I don't have that many friends that I keep in contact with, I guess. I have a lot of acquaintances, but if you have relied more on romantic relationships than friendships, then maybe part of your lesson too is to focus on friendships now. And here's why: because if you are addicted to relationships and you've relied on your relationships for companionship, meaning for your social life, then when your twin comes back around, you are going to totally rely on that person for your social well-being. And that's not fair. That's 100% not fair to your twin. Absolutely not. And I know this. Like, I'm fully aware and very well cognizant of that fact that I cannot rely on my twin for all my social interaction. There's no way. So it's really important that you find good friends as you're spiritually evolving. It's good that you find good friends who are on the same spiritual level as you, so that you don't get bored or you don't find that you do not resonate with the people that you used to resonate with. And I think a lot of us are on this transformation where we're having to find new friends because we're letting go of old friendships, maybe that are not on the same wavelength as we are now. And again, daunting task. Hello. How do you find that? But, if you ask your angels and guides, and that's what I'm going to do, is just kind of like ask my angels and guides to guide me toward people who are on the same frequency, on the same wavelength as me, so I don't have to like weed through the people that are not, or who think I might be a weirdo, which I'm sure there's a lot out there that do. And that's okay. I'm okay with that. It's like, there comes a point that you're just like, whatever, okay, I am who I am, and you know what, if you like it, great. If you don't, that's fine. It's all good. So yeah, so that's my story today. That's my hard lesson today. It sucks. I am not in a good space about this, but I know it's necessary. I know it was a necessary move, and I had to do it. I didn't like it, but I had to do it. So my new focus, okay, here you go. I have to hold myself accountable now because I'm telling you guys. So I'm telling about 1,000+ people out there in YouTube land that my commitment is to finding friends in the LA area, having a social network around the space where I live, and working out because I got to get my ass back into shape. Seriously, that's my issue, guys. So I love working out. Working out is not an issue for me. I actually love working out, but because I'm a workaholic, sometimes my workouts can take a back seat. I work out at least 3 times a week, but I'd like it to be 7 days a week. So that's where I need to be, guys. So I'm counting on you to hold me accountable, everyone in YouTube land who's watching this video. But there you go. There's my story. Now, as I close this, I know this has been long, but as I close this, I know some of you are dying, because I've been getting messages, but dying to hear my twin flame story. That's a whole other ballgame, you guys. My twin may not want the story told on YouTube. Okay, so when we are in permanent reunion, he and I will have that discussion as to how much of our story can be told on YouTube. but I have to respect him. Not everybody wants to be a YouTube star, right? Not everyone wants their private life out there in YouTube land. Like, not everybody wants that. So I don't care. I don't mind if my story is out there, because you know what? Like I said, if I'm just living my life and I can't help at least one other person, then why? Why am I going through this? So, but my twin, that's a whole other story. He's a much more private person than I am, so he may not want his story out there. And that's okay, because that's his part of our story. And if that needs to be private, it needs to be private. So again, stay tuned. Who knows? Maybe he'll be okay with it. But until then, the story will remain untold. So thank you so much for joining me. Hopefully you're going to go out on the Friday night. I'm probably going to be editing this video and putting it up on YouTube. Thank you for subscribing to my channel below. Share this video with other twin flames. And thank you for buying books and pledging your support on Patreon. www.patreon.com/Michelle S. Fondin. And I will see you in the next video.